As we bring tonight's conversation into reality for all, I would like to say Happy New Year to everyone and welcome back to Black Talk Platform, where we may speak globally, but make no mistake, we're very clear that our North Star is about the well being of the Black community, especially here in the United States. So, tonight in this new year, 9 days in, we are reflecting on three very serious new movements in this country. This is a new year, and it's also a new order. And what I mean when I say a new order is that it would appear that this nation, in my opinion, is quickly devolving. I've never been one of those people who believes that this is an exceptional country. And for those of you who are new and don't understand why I say that, well, my history as a descendant of enslaved people here in the United States tells me that this is a nation that formed without regard to the Black people who were being enslaved in it. And I carry the mantle for my ancestors who were never made whole, who were never made to feel like human beings in this country. And so, therefore, the notion that the United States has ever been exceptional is not one that I have entertained, nor am I willing to entertain, as that has not proven to be true for me and my family and many families in the United States. However, this is 9 days into the brand new year known as 2026, and much has occurred in these short 9 days of the new year. From the swearing in of New York City's new mayor to the invasion, I will call it an invasion. And it's interesting because we spend so much time on mainstream media, whether on the left or the right, it really doesn't matter. We spend so much time allowing them to shape how we speak about the things that we are seeing and hearing about without holding their feet to the fire to make them call a spade a spade. I don't need to sit up here in defense of Nicolas Maduro because, from what I've heard far and wide, he is not a good guy. But I do not believe that it was the responsibility under the pretext of the United States stating that they're going in to keep drug traffickers from bringing drugs into the United States. And if you believe that narrative, I would invite you to go back to fifth grade, perhaps, to learn about this nation and what it's done from its inception. It was a bold faced lie that came to fruition and revealed itself as such after they went in, sent the CIA in, according to what the president has said, to arrest and kidnap Nicolas Maduro and his wife, bringing them to New York State, making us more of a target than we already are, and who is housed just miles from where I'm sitting, to stand trial for the crimes that he has been indicted on in U.S. federal court. You can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up. And I am going to use my words carefully. What I am saying is that after hearing what they've done and hearing the president say, we are running Venezuela now, I would hope that many of you who believed the pretext that was given to us, that they were going in to ensure that no more drug trafficking could come out of the place of Venezuela into the United States. You now know that that was never the reason for this grand focus on Venezuela, but it was, as the president said, taking their oil. And just as early as today, as recent as today, the president announced that they have gotten over $4 billion worth of Venezuela oil. It was always about the oil. In his justification of kidnapping and arresting Maduro and his wife, he said he wanted the Venezuela people to now prosper. How does that happen when you're extracting from Venezuela the very thing that could cause them to prosper finally, meaning the oil reserves? If you are believing still that we are inside of Venezuela running things because this country cares about the people of Venezuela, you're sadly mistaken, and you've been misled, and you've allowed yourself to be misled because you're not availing yourself to many truths in journalism that exist. I am not a journalist, but what I am is an avid reader, and I don't need to be convinced that what happened and right under the nose of our legislative branch, they are completely ineffective for creating the checks and balances that were established in the United States Constitution. They're completely ineffective, inadequate, and are entirely sold out to this president and his administration. What disappeared from the news headlines? I'll give you a second to think about it. What has disappeared almost entirely from the news headlines since the invasion of Venezuela? Can anybody guess? Okay. Hey, Reverend Barbara, thank you so much for being here, and happy blessed new year to you as well. I asked the question to you and the other audience members, Reverend Barbara, what aren't you seeing in the headlines anymore since the invasion of Venezuela? It is the Jeffrey Epstein files. Exactly. It is the Jeffrey Epstein files. So let me understand this. A couple of weeks ago, the majority except for one, House of Representatives voted to have the Epstein files released. And I believe, if you follow my logic, I believe that this invasion was timed to do exactly what it has done. Take all focus and attention off of Jeffrey Epstein and his victims. All of a sudden, no longer does it matter if young underage girls were sexually abused by Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and all of the dignitaries who visited that island. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter. It's not important. But it is. It is still important, and it needs to make its way back to the headlines. Don't continue to support these mainstream outlets who will not hold this administration's feet to the fire. They want us to go to sleep thinking about Venezuela, but there's something new that they have our attention. And we need to talk about that too in a few minutes. The next thing, New York City has a new mayor. And I've gotten into it right away because I don't have my co-host here, Reverend Pastor Davis. He couldn't be with us tonight, so he gives me a little balance. He helps me to monitor my time a little better because we're having dialogue. But you see, I can be in a soliloquy format for this hour. But I forgot to do the shout out, so I'll go back in a minute. I just want to tee up all three segments that we're going to be speaking about tonight. So we have a brand new mayor. On his first day in office, he rescinded or revoked all of former Mayor Eric Adams's executive orders that were signed on the day and preceding to the end of his term of his indictment. I'm smiling because I love it. I love it. On his way out, and I actually mentioned this on the last show at the end of 2025, Mayor Adams did some stuff that harms everyday people. He used his executive powers to try to tie the hands of the new mayor. But I am happy to say that he must have some really good legal counsel around him, because they knew what had to be done. And this unraveling of the executive orders of the previous mayor is something that had to be done. To be sure, my thought and my suspicion is that Mayor Mamdani will go through all of those executive orders. He will look, and as we do in teaching, we have the children do a T chart. He will have them look at each and every one of them to see if there's anything in those executive orders that are salvageable for the benefit of the New York residents, over 8.5 million of us. And if they are something that he believes he can salvage or should be salvaged, he'll do just that. But by rescinding or revoking Eric Adams's executive orders, it gives him an opportunity to start fresh. It gives him an opportunity to do things without regard to people saying, oh, he's just another Eric Adams, or he's just continuing the policies of the previous administration. He has a new and clean slate, and we have to be eager to see how that rolls out. The next thing we're going to talk about, and perhaps for this moment in time, the most important, is ISIS activities across the country, but specifically in Minneapolis, where a 37-year-old mother of three was killed by an ICE agent. And it has created controversy that will go on for days. And, you know, as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, it hurts to hear how callously life is spoken about by those who possess power, chiefly the President of the United States, but even worse, the Vice President of the United States. And as we keep hearing more and more elected officials speak, the rhetoric is becoming more negative. This woman's whole life is on display. And I have a question about the ICE agent who killed her. If he was rammed into or was assaulted 6 months ago, and the vice president made mention that he perhaps is still thinking about what happened to him 6 months ago, the chief and primary question that I have is, why is he back to work? Because it sounds like, according to the vice president, that he's experiencing a level of post-traumatic disorder, PTSD, post-traumatic syndrome disorder. And if that's the case, he's not safe on our streets, but he's not even safe to be around his colleagues, his fellow law enforcement, ICE agents. Why are they risking their lives and ours to have an officer who clearly, according to the Vice President of the United States, is suffering from some degree of PTSD from his injuries at the hands of one of the public that occurred 6 months ago? Why? Why is he out there? And if you're not asking yourself that question and even demanding an answer, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. So I believe that a lot of people have a lot of ideas about ICE. And I'm talking about the Black community as well. Some people fail to consider history before they join bandwagons that invite us to applaud when a woman is shot for all the world to see. Not just shot, but shot in her face. And unless there's a really great undertaker or a mortician, her casket may have to be closed. Her children may not ever get to see her face again for their goodbyes. Humanize the woman instead of dissecting her life. Now, I will say that there still needs to be more information about how this began in the first place. But again, I'm always going to speed to the care and compassion. There are 3 orphan children now. One of those children of hers, I understand, father died some years ago. So now that child is completely an orphan, while the other two's father may still be alive. And she was someone's daughter. Her mother has spoken about her. Humanize the victim before we begin to make her a villain. Because from what I've seen, from what they've allowed us to see, I've just not seen this threat that they're continuing to say he believed he was under. I'm not seeing it. And in fact, I saw his injury on his arm today from the 6 months ago incident, but his foot, he seemed to be walking just fine. I don't know, because there is that adrenaline factor. I am not the investigator, but the rhetoric that is being pushed, the propaganda that is being pushed so that the American people can continue to support ICE, it's a slippery slope, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. Let's go back. I want to shout out none other than Miss Jackie Salvatore. Jackie Salvatore has done something that has never been done in the state of New York. She has become the very first Black and female sheriff in the entire state of New York. It is 2026, people. To have a first of this nature is both wonderful and still very concerning. That in 2026, we're having a first such as this. But we take nothing away from Sheriff Jackie Salvatore. We are ecstatic about her election. It was a public position. It's a public position where she received the full support of the retiring sheriff in her election run. So we shout her out with big, big guns, and we say we hope that she will not be the last. We are looking forward to others joining her ranks throughout the state of New York. So shout out to Sheriff Jackie Salvatore. Let's go back, and let's sort of get into Venezuela. Oh my goodness. History is my favorite subject out of all of them, and second is English, right? I love to read, I love to write. But one thing is for sure, that the way the Constitution was developed was to create 3 branches of government sharing equal power. And I know I keep talking about the legislative branch, but the same could be said about the judicial branch, at least as it relates to the Supreme Court. They have essentially abdicated their roles and their responsibilities to the executive branch. I heard just this morning from Jonathan Karl, who was fired from ABC for speaking truth to power. He shared a clip that where the president was being interviewed, and they asked him what checks were there on his powers. And what the president said, and I am not repeating this verbatim, he said, "The thing that gives me my check is my morality and my mind." He said his morality and his mind. Now, we remember from his first term in office that he'd be doom scrolling on Twitter while eating Big Macs and French fries from McDonald's, and then getting up the next day saying what he was going to do. Now, I mean, he didn't do much policy on Twitter like he does on Truth Social today. But this is the mind of the man who is essentially the most powerful man on earth. It is his morality and his mind that puts a check on him. Let that sit with you for a moment. Let that sit with you for a moment. Now, for those who are not believers as I am, this might instill a lot of fear in you to hear something so bizarre. It's not, I'm not fearful, but I do realize that this is what we are facing. We are facing anything goes under this president. Why? Because it is only his morality and his mind that puts a check on him. I understand. I mean, somebody sent me a thing saying that Greenland is getting ready to negotiate being taken over by the United States. We are living in a very, very crazy time, and it's a new order. When I think back now to what's going on with ICE, it's not only about the young lady losing her life as she did, and the justification that's coming out of the White House and from different segments of the RNC. It's just mind-blowing. And don't forget, Minneapolis is the very same place where George Floyd lost his life, also to law enforcement. Some would say Minneapolis is cursed. I don't know that it's cursed. But there is something about it that makes it a target for hatred at the highest of levels. Portland is not far behind it. Portland is not far behind it because both those cities have been targeted by the Department of Homeland Security under the leadership of Secretary Noem. Did you all hear her? Did you all hear her? After they dethroned Nicolas Maduro, I need you to follow. You got to follow. You got to follow. Because some of you are out here saying, yay, 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 they're getting rid of the Venezuelans. But guess what Secretary Noem said? She says, now, Venezuelans, you have a clear path to United States citizenship. You have to hear what these people are saying and start to deconstruct what you're hearing. Why, if the most powerful nation on earth is running Venezuela, why do people need to come here? Why do they still need to seek asylum? Why do they still need to seek citizenship in the United States? Why can't the 8 million who have left over the last 10 years under the Maduro regime, why can't they just go back home? Why can't they just return home? Why do we have to extend citizenship to them? If you all are not thinking about the things that you're hearing from this administration and you're just going along to get along, shame on you. And I say shame on you because there is at least one person that each of us impact on a daily basis. And if this is where you find yourself believing that it's okay for now the Venezuelans to receive citizenship when the United States, the very place they want to be, is running their home country, make it make sense. How does that make sense to anyone? But You are believing that as long as ICE is going after migrants and illegals, that you are safe as a Black person. Okay. So Minneapolis, rewind to before the sister was killed and lost her life by ICE. Last week, I believe, is when this big scandal about the Somalians receiving all these millions of dollars for years for daycare, for slots not filled by any human person, especially a child. It blows up to the point where now the governor is no longer running. He's retiring. I'm always going to hold the feet to the fire. It doesn't matter if it's left or right. And this is one of the problems with me recommending to you guys to get off of mainstream media, because many in the left sphere of Black Talks, not Black Talk platform, I'm not talking about me, they never hold Democrats accountable. And that's a problem for me. They need to be held accountable too. Tim Walz was almost our vice president, guys. And all of this mismanagement of money. And to be sure, the Somalis are not the only ones who have been robbing the Minnesota or the Minneapolis, the people of Minnesota. There's a much bigger white woman who, when I say big, I'm not talking about her physicality. I'm talking about a bigger case. One woman, this white woman, also in Minneapolis, just routing the system. And so this should make you wonder, because I'm not from Minnesota, what is their unemployment level? What is the homelessness rate? How many people are receiving SNAP benefits? How many children are living in poverty? But because you saw the assault on the Somalis, and let me be very clear, I have no love for anyone who steals, especially people who are gaming the system. Let me give you another rewind of knowledge. I shared with you, I stopped being a real estate mortgage person because the benefits for immigrants far exceed anything that Black Americans have ever been able to receive from this country. I didn't feel comfortable knowing that I could not put Black Americans into the same loan packages as I could for someone who has come from another country into the United States. United States immigration laws are really messed up, and they are harming American citizens, especially Black Americans. I'm very clear about that. So yes, I have a personal upset and anger to hear that a whole community, which has said over and over again, they wanted to replace Black Americans. You don't believe me? Go and find it. It's public knowledge that they want to replace Black Americans, and they have done that in Minneapolis. They've basically done it. They're one of the most powerful voting blocks in Minneapolis. So, I mean, I don't know what happened to the Blacks. I don't think we left Minneapolis, but we don't have that same level of power anymore. Okay. But for you to say that, okay, it's okay for ICE to do this because these people are immigrant class, not good. Because the greater implications with the level of propaganda coming out of this administration, and the RNC and Republican elected officials, I would like to pose the question to you. Do you believe that at some point, if ICE continues to be unchecked, that they may start going door to door or just continue to round up American citizens? I have an expression that I use, and I mean it when I say it. I'm not intending to offend anyone in particular. I really am not. But one thing I've come to know is that complexion does not mean reflection. What I mean by that is that while we are in the streets and we're constantly fighting on behalf of other people, why do we stop fighting for ourselves? Why do we stop fighting for ourselves? If we continue to fight for ourselves, then the job of galvanizing and coalescing with other groups would be that much easier. But the sad reality is, Black Americans, we don't stand together to fight for what we are owed in this nation as a people, as a group, right? And so what we do is we just turn our venom against those people who have complexions that are similar to ours. Because their politics, we are very clear, do not reflect the lives of Black Americans. And I believe we can hold to that. But the one thing that is missing is the unification around our needs, around our cause. Until we as Black Americans begin to work together as one, how much sense does it make for us to stand on front lines for people who would not do it for us by their own admission? I'm throwing these things out here for you, not to stir up anger, but let's face facts. If we can humanize everybody, then when I tell you the Somalis took money, stole money from the state, and I tell you this white woman stole money from the state of Minneapolis, Minnesota, when you center yourself as first, you see them both as the same thieves who have taken from the state of Minnesota, and Black people are always the first ones to suffer. We talked about the high unemployment rate, how we are yet again, as Black Americans, in a position where our unemployment rate is double that of the national average at 8.3% or somewhere there near. So go into a state like Minnesota and find out what their Black unemployment rate is like. And then you look back to the Somali community who've stolen this money, and there are no absolutes. So therefore, every Somali person in Minnesota is not to be indicted for the sins of a few. So you'll think about those people who stole from the state, as well as the white woman who did, I don't know her name, and you will see how their actions are impacting the people in the state of Minnesota. And also with Tim Walz having been the one who has been, allowing this. And I say allowing it because all of this happened under his watch. And so there should be no crying in tea or milk or anything of that nature about him deciding not to run. You got to remember that he was this close to becoming our vice president. Probably, most definitely, still probably a better pick than who we have, because I personally believe that J.D. Vance is far worse than Trump. We just haven't seen it yet because he's the vice president, but he gives us little glimpses of who he really is. But this is even more reason why, now that we're in 2026, this is probably the most significant midterm election year ever. And so the people of Minnesota really need to really think about who their next governor is going to be and who they're going to elect, period, as their representatives. And that's not limited only to Minnesota. That's throughout the nation. I am of the opinion, and I know I'll get a lot of heat from some people who have followed me over the past few years, but I am of the opinion that this administration does not need to be extended another 4 years, and that the Republicans who are in the majority in the U.S. Senate and in the U.S. House of Representatives, who have allowed this president to go unchecked, they do not need to be reelected. And so what does that mean? Like you do in your everyday life, you go to work. Some of you don't like your employers, you don't like your supervisors, you don't like your directors, wherever you work. Some of you who are entrepreneurs and you're sitting before venture capitalists or people who will fund and support your product or your business, you don't like them all, but you need them to some degree. We, as Black people, we need to come up with a list of demands from anyone who wants our vote. We are right before the primary season, and we need to get that list of demands together now. Don't wait, and then complain when your person does not win. Let me give you an example. So we talked on this platform about Jasmine Crockett and the other man, the man who's also running for Congress in Texas. Listen, this is not a Texas issue. This is a nationwide issue. We need to maintain or retain Democratic seats, but not just because they're Democrats. I really believe they're more aligned with our way of thinking. I'm not talking about the far left. I'm talking about those who can be reasoned with, those who can get a list from us and walk with that list. And I really don't care what their complexion is. If they will center Black issues in their platform without it being something on a back page of their campaign page, then we need to get to them and give them our demands, or then we withhold our votes. It's time out for talking heads telling us that we have to have the Democrats because the Republicans are so bad. They are bad. But again, I've reminded you before, we demanded nothing of President Biden before he selected Vice President Harris as his running mate. I mean, absolutely nothing. We demanded absolutely nothing before that convention in August. I kept waiting with bated breath, saying that somebody, the legacy organizations, they're going to come out, they're going to have a list of demands before he goes and he decides who he's going to be. And I couldn't remember her name because I wanted her to be his selection. And that was former Congresswoman Valerie Deming. I couldn't remember her name the last time we were talking about that on Black Talk platform a couple of weeks ago. But I wanted it to be Val Demings. Why? She was a cop. So she wasn't going to have a whole lot of problems with the left or the right. But she was a fine legislator. She herself used to be a cop, and her husband was a cop down in Florida. And I think he's the mayor of Orlando now, her husband. That's who I wanted. But I do believe that this was an issue of, she didn't have any scandals to my knowledge. She had no scandals. She had a good legislative history. And if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me in the chat, really, because I don't mind being corrected. I can be wrong, but there was no demand. But here's the thing: she was a Black American. She is a Black American, and maybe her complexion was a little bit too much for even the legacy organizations to support her in the nomination. I don't know. But all I know is that there were no demands made of President Biden. And after he won that convention, and he gave us Vice President Harris, he dressed down the legacy organization. So I guess they really didn't have the level of pull that I thought they did. But that's why this moment matters most. Everyone who is a Black American, and we find ourselves being erased, we find ourselves being marginalized for everybody else, whether they look like us or not. You need to start small. Like I said earlier, every day we impact the lives of at least one person. At least one person. So you need to start having, offline conversations with those closest to you. Imagine you live in a neighborhood of about 30 houses, right? Typically, we know our left and our right neighbor, but they're not just one person. They're whole households. And yes, households can be divided politically, and that's often the case. But start somewhere. Start with your neighbors on the side. Have meetings that are not advertised. You got to start back to knocking on doors and taking pies and saying, let's talk about this nonsense because a lot is happening in our nation and I just need to talk about it to you. We might not always come to a consensus, but we need to at least start the conversation. And they cannot, I am convinced, those conversations cannot happen in social media. They cannot happen in social media. Everything we say is being monitored. So I'm giving an example. We've been told for years to turn off certain approvals in our Google. As soon as I get off, I'm sure I'll either see a commercial, or if I go into my Google search, I will see a list of things similar to that which I've shared here tonight on Black Talk platform. They're running analytics on us every which way but loose. And the only space that we can truly control is our personal space. And that might not be too secure either. Get back to your neighbors. When 10 of you show up at an elected official's office, they start to take notice. But the calls add up. They do. But they're not going to remember Deborah Jenkins. But if Deborah comes with 10 other people or 9 other people, they will listen. They'll at least pay attention. Start small, but start. Don't give your vote away. They need to earn it. And I pray that this is the year that churches stop allowing endless numbers of politicians and hopefuls coming into the pulpit. I mean, they literally stand in the pulpit, which was once thought of as sacred space. They stand in the pulpit and they beg parishioners for their votes. This is a long-standing tradition in churches, not no Black church, the church. But I am talking to the Black church. Stop letting them have a pre-meeting with them, pastors, having already done a survey with your congregation. This is as much sacred as is the preached word and the taught word. And why do I say that? Because if your congregation is living in poverty, living in shelters, food insecure because they're at your pantry every time it's open, you need to survey them to find out what their list of demands are. You need to send it to those politicians who will be beating down your doors and have them come in and speak to those and those alone. Because otherwise, you're doing a disservice to the faithful community who believes in you. I don't care who they are, how big they are. If they cannot address the needs of your constituents who are your congregants, you should not be allowing them in your church and your church's pulpit. That is another method of fleecing the flock of the Most High God. And it's time out in 2026. So we have 2 things to do. We need to start talking to our neighbors. We need to determine which candidates we like or we think we want to hear from. And we cannot leave it to the legacy organizations. They are all going to have candidate forums. In fact, on the 24th in Texas, and you guys can go and Google this, they will be having one with Jasmine Crockett and the brother. And I understand that he's really good. Pastor Davis mentioned him fondly when we were talking about them a couple of weeks back. So it is something that we should all be paying attention to, what happens in Texas. And then for those of you who are living in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis just announced that they're about to gear up for their redistricting. Florida is a beast for Black people, but there will still be those pockets where we can thrive. Many people live down there, and everything is not lost to this crazy new order that is going on. So start gathering your people. And just imagine if one person gathered 10 friends, and each of those friends gathered another 10. You're already at 100. You take a day and decide that we are all free, or we will intentionally be free, and we're going down to our state senator, our state assembly person, our United States congressman or woman, our United States senator's office. Hit them all on the same day so that you don't lose too much time at work. But reserve one of your PTOs to go and do legislative work that directly impacts you and your family. Imagine 100 people showing up. And even if you're not able to get into the legislators themselves, I'm sure the media will take notice. If this happened all over the country in 50 states, what a showing that would be. What a tell that would be, that while you all are establishing a new order in this country, we're establishing our own new order. And here are our demands. If you want our vote, this is what you have to consider and do for us. And tell us how you're going to get it done in your first 100 days. This has to be well thought out. We cannot play by their rules any longer. This is extremely, I'm trying to get the right words. We are in an inflection point as individuals who are relying on elected officials to serve us. We're not being served well, and we need that. Oh, thank you, Tallarico. Tallarico. Thank you so much, Reverend Barbara. Tallarico. So it will be a debate between Jasmine Crockett, and I think he's a state senator, I believe. You can correct me also on that. Tallarico. Both of them are admired in that state for their contributions to the political scope, but only one of them will be able to gain the nomination of the Democratic Party in their congressional district that they are running for. And so, we really want, not the congressional, they're running for Senate, I believe. Yeah, they're running for United States Senate. So it would behoove us all to just sort of tune into that on the 24th. But go and look it up and you'll find it. I'm not sure if it's going to be limited to those who are already on the network that is running it. But definitely keep that in mind. And if you're not able to watch it when it's first run, definitely I'm sure it will be up on YouTube the next day or later that evening. I think the 24th is a Sunday. I'm not really sure about that, but definitely check that out. Check that out so we can see how the rest of our states are going to go. There's a lot always happening here in New York when we have like umpteen people running for one spot. And it's going to be an interesting election cycle in New York and in other states. There are a lot of Democrats who are retiring, and there are a few Republicans who are retiring. We need to position ourselves. Go in and let's be very, very fair. In terms of the legislation that the legislating that they're doing right now in the House of Representatives, I'm not pleased with any of the Republicans other than Thomas Massey. And I'm not sure if he's House of Representatives or a senator. But Thomas Massey is he's House of Representative. He's holding the feet to the fire as much as he can. I believe he's one of those who is retiring. I'm not positive. But with the Epstein files, he and Ro Khanna, that's a bipartisan duo who are trying to hold this administration's feet to the fire as it relates to the Epstein files, and they're having a hard time of it now. Texas House of Representative. Okay, he's a Texas House of Representative, Mr. Tellerico. Okay, thank you so much, Reverend Barbara. Yeah, so listen, it's not a Texas issue. It's an all hands on deck issue. And yes, we have to consider what's going on in Alaska. We have to consider what's going on in Hawaii. We have people all over this country. But our needs have to be brought to the table. And it needs to be done in a very orderly way. There will be people who are, going out there and are being paid by those who are currently in office, the ones who they believe. I'm talking about on the national level when we get ready to re-elect the president, to elect a president in 2028. It begins now, because what's happening in the midterms in November will have a huge impact on the election cycle for president. And we'll begin to see who will be running for president, um, against the incumbent, I guess, Vice President, JD Vance. That's just something that I don't want to imagine. And that's why we have to really begin to organize now. But it can't be online. And that's why I'm encouraging you to do it right where you live. Do it in your homes. It's a tricky thing to try to do it at work, because there are always these anti-political policies within your workplace. Start in your neighborhoods, because when you think about taxes, those people and you share that in common, regardless of the political party that you are leaning towards. And if you start talking to your neighbors, you might just see that they also feel the same way that you feel. Like, we're in a dangerous place right now. And the only way we can get out of it, in my opinion, is for us to work together. How does that look? It may look differently here in New York. And then when you break down the five boroughs are very uniquely their own. We have different needs in each borough. In the Bronx, there are 1.4 million of us, but Brooklyn is the larger borough, and it has the highest level of diversity, I believe. While in Queens, there's a lot of diversity, but it's pocketed. And in Staten Island, it's like a stepchild, but they have a very, very divided um, um, borough, and it's almost across racial lines. So there are a lot of different, and then of course we have Manhattan, the star child of the five, that you have a lot of different communities where a lot of wealth is concentrated. The most wealth in New York City is concentrated in Manhattan. So the needs are different. You have Harlem, where we're just holding on to our community there as Black people, right? You have Washington Heights, where it is largely Dominican, but a lot of other immigrants are coming in too. But guess what? When I worked in Washington Heights, I was so, so happy to see that there were many Black Americans who were still living there. So there are communities in and throughout the five boroughs of New York. We all look different, and we all have different needs. And that's why when the slogan is made that all politics is local, you have to start where you are, from city council to um, assembly, state legislators, and then the United States representatives. In New York State, I don't believe that there's been any serious announcements about primarying um, Senator Chuck Schumer. Have been rumored that AOC might, but I have not heard her make an announcement as yet. But she still has time. She has a little bit of time, I believe. And then, of course, Kirsten Gillibrand, who is our United States Senator upstate. I think she may be being primaried. I'm not positive, but it's important for you to know who you live around and who the elected officials are, and get started. Get started now. Do not wait, because the longer you wait, the more frustrated you're going to be when you begin to see the picture of who will be representing you or possibly representing you in the fall takes place. And then that's when the real begging is going to take place. They're going to be like, you gotta support the blue. Why? Why do I have to support the blue? If the blue is not doing anything for me, why am I supporting them? You don't want to have that question after June. You want to be a part of selecting who will be representing you after June. So the primary season is upon us. Get your 10 people. Have them get their 10 people. There's 100 of you that no one online knows about until you actually start making your demands known. So I am, again, as I wrap up, cautiously optimistic about what the leadership of Mayor Mamdani might look like for us as New York City residents. I can say that I am pleased with, so far, it's only been a few days, with his appointment of the new school's chancellor. He seems to want to emphasize continually reading literacy. And he said he is doing something a little different with math. You cannot have a bunch of illiterate children. They are the next generation of leaders. And so, with his focus on literacy, once you know how to read, write, and comprehend those two things, it transfers across all content areas, and that makes for a better student. Not just graduating 65 average people, or if you are special ed, 55, but we're truly graduating scholars. That is the goal. And so until we see differently, I think that has been a good appointment. He will continue to make his appointments, and we'll be keeping watch on those people. That's our job here in New York City. What's your job where you are? We cannot only complain, we have to be a part of the solution we desire. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for continuing to support Black Talk Platform. I was saying to my daughter a little while ago, because I'm doing something for Women's History Month, which is something that I often do. And I have a workshop coming up on the 18th. And I am going to be offering academic classes beginning in February. I switched it, Reverend Barbara, to February because it is Black History Month, and it makes sense that we start talking about our historical perspectives from a Black viewpoint in February, which is Black History Month, expressly Black History Month, which of course we know 365 days is Black History. But I realized that I too have to rebuild from the ground up. And I'm okay with that. You know why? Because freedom tastes good. What do I mean by that? To be able to chart my own course. You have no idea what Dr. Deborah Jenkins has been through, just say in the last almost 3 years. But I feel so good. I feel liberated because I am able to do what I believe the Most High God wants me to do. Spiritually, politically, and economically. But social justice has always been my theme. But I'm going to show you how I had nothing. If you're interested in my workshop on the 18th, my sister will probably be like, you always talk too much. You say too much. I can't stop because I need to help people. People are living in bondage. They're flexing on social media, but they're living in bondage. And I want to be a part of that. And when I don't do church phrases, I don't do that. But what I can do, and without apology, is share my story. And so I'm talking about self-actualizing through your finances. When I say all of the work that I do, public facing, has been without being paid, understand that I do what I do because I love my people. And I also believe the Bible that I have my reward. But rewards don't pay bills, right? And so I've done all of this work all these years, and it finally caught up to me. And so I'm sharing how I was able to bounce back. And I just praise the Lord for allowing me to bounce back after 3 years of financial struggle. And I want to share it, especially with Gen Xers and younger baby boomers. Because I believe, and I say younger baby boomers, I'm talking about people 65 and under, because those who are older, their lives are set. But you would be surprised. Oh my goodness. You would be surprised how many Gen Xers are starting over economically. Join me on the 18th if you want to hear my story, and I can show you how I was able to bounce back. No MLMs, no pyramid schemes, just trust in the Lord and belief that it would be done. God bless you all. I thank you. Yes, it will be online. The workshop will be online. Reverend Barbara, I will put it on my Facebook, just in case you want to look at it. And anyone else, it's going to be on my Facebook. I think I put it on LinkedIn. I will put it all over social media. But the workshop itself will be online, and it is after church hours. So I welcome any and all of you to come. It's for women. It's for women. Okay? God bless you all, and thank you. Thank you again for being here with me tonight. I'll see you next week if the Lord spares life. Black Talk platform out.